Good morning and greetings from Northumberland. It's the 15th of July. It's a bright and pleasant morning here in Northumberland, and I send you good wishes wherever you are. Have you ever noticed that saints are a bit like buses? We don't celebrate one and then we get two or three in a row. Yesterday we had John Keble, and today we have two saints, St. Swithin, back to him in a moment, who lived in, who died in about 862, and St. Bonaventure, who died in 1274, living about 400 years apart, one of them in Wessex in England, in the Anglo-Saxon kingdom, and the other living in both Italy and in Paris, and having a very important influence too. Let's start with Swithin because he's our English saint and is part of English folklore. As you know, I always give you a weather report in the morning. That's because I'm British and we always talk about the weather. And St. Swithin, of course, is associated with the weather. There is this legend that if it rains today, it will rain for 40 days, and if it's dry today, it will be dry for 40 days. I don't know why this legend exists, because a moment of subjecting it to empirical analysis would prove it to be wrong. Let me just suggest you do it. Get your diary, and if there's any rain today, put an R in the page, and then see what happens for the next 40 days. And I'm pretty sure it won't be consistent. Occasionally, there is a time when it's stays very dry or stays very wet, but most of the time it isn't true. But it comes from a legend. A legend about Swithin. Swithin was a very able man, a priest, and then became a bishop, and he was well known for his learning and his tutoring, and many stories are told about his eminence and his importance. But he chose humility. He chose, when he died, to be buried outside the minster, outside what we would call Winchester Cathedral. He chose an obscure and peaceful grave. And then about 90 years later, they decided to move him into a more important spot where people could come and venerate him. And it rained, and it rained, and it rained, and it was taken to be a sign of his displeasure and divine displeasure at this rejection of his humility. The keynote for him was that although he was very, very able, he chose a humble position and sought to simply follow God. Fast forward 400 years, Bonaventure, part of the second generation of Franciscans, following on after St. Francis, and he too was a brilliant man. He was eminent as a theologian, as a teacher, as a disciple, and he became very, very important and became the head of the Franciscan order. And he made certain modifications to the order. He allowed, for example, the Franciscans to own books, to follow study, and he encouraged them to work alongside parochial clergy rather than in opposition to them, and to engage in work in universities and among those people who were, if you like, intellectually able. Alongside that, he also worked for the reconciliation of the church in the East and the West, the Orthodox and the Roman Catholic Church. Remember the branches I was talking about yesterday. And he too pursued simplicity in his Franciscan way. So not for him were those great high rewards, but for him was also the simplicity of being a follower of Jesus. And it's those two things, as well as the accident of their death occurring on the same day, that unites, it seems to me, Swithin and Bonaventure, 400 years apart, in different parts of Europe, but following the same path. Yesterday, the reading at Compline was, "Come to me if you're troubled and overburdened, take my yoke and learn from me." And both Swithin and Bonaventure took up the yoke of Christ and sought to follow the way of Christ, despite their great eminence and learning, in a way of simplicity. It sets something before us, an important pattern. Is that what it's all about for Christians? To follow Jesus, whatever our talents, whatever our skills, in a simple way that brings us close to him and helps us to share his love with those around us. That seems to have been the experience of saint after saint. And today, Swithin and Bonaventure set that before us. So let's not worry about the weather, but let's be concerned with following Jesus in the way of simplicity and love. May God bless us.